So good evening, all of you. Thank you for coming. And I thought that for the first few minutes of this session, we can just sit quietly and get ourselves into a better state of mind for listening to the talk. So first of all, become aware of your body. Let your body relax. If you notice any tension in any part of your body, see if you can let the tension melt and flow away, flow down into the floor and disappear, leaving your body feeling light, clear, relaxed, free of tension. Now become aware of your breathing, the natural, steady flow of your breath in and out. Let your mind, your awareness flow with the breath, flowing in and flowing out. And in this way, let your mind settle down in the present. Let go of or put aside any thoughts you might have in your mind. Thoughts from the past, which can include today, things that you did today or things that happened to you today, or any time in the past. So that's past, that's gone, that's over. So just leave the past aside. Also, don't let your mind travel to the future, thinking about, imagining what you're going to do later tonight, after this talk, or tomorrow, or any time in the future. Future hasn't happened yet, and we can't be sure what will happen in the future. So better not to spend too much time thinking about the future. So just let your mind, your awareness be in the present, right here, right now, this moment, this place. Just being aware of the breath flowing in and flowing out. Now, bring into your mind a very positive thought or feeling or attitude about why you're here tonight. Try your very best to bring into your mind a wish to make your life as beneficial as you can, both for yourself and for others. For the people that you meet in your life, the people you are already in relationships with, your family, friends, people you work with. So those people you know and meet and deal with in your life, and anyone else that you meet and have interaction with in your life. See if you can feel that you would like to make your life helpful, beneficial, and not harmful to anybody, yourself or anyone else. To not be a cause of unhappiness or problems or suffering. And instead, as much as possible, to be a cause of happiness, good feelings, peace. So then if you are able to have that thought, that feeling in your mind, think that that is your reason for being here tonight. You're here tonight in order to learn something that will help you achieve that goal of making your life as helpful as possible, a source of happiness and not problems and suffering. Okay, so when you feel ready to, you can relax, open your eyes, sit in whatever way is most comfortable for you. Okay, so the subject of the talk tonight is ultimate healing. And this is actually a big subject, an important subject, and a difficult subject. And I'm not a healer or a doctor or any kind of medical person. I'm just a religious practitioner and teacher. So you might wonder, well, what right do I have, what authority do I have to talk about this subject of healing? So the reason is because in Buddhism, which I have some familiarity with, there's a lot of talk about and a lot of emphasis on the subject of the mind and also the connection or interrelationship between mind and body and therefore between mind and health. Okay, so there is definitely a connection there. And so that's the first thing I'm going to be talking about in the talk, is this connection between our mind and our body, and in that way between mind and our health. Then I'll go on to talk about some ways or methods from the Buddhist tradition that will enable us to bring about greater happiness and health and well-being to our body and our mind. Then I'll lead you in a guided exercise or meditation practice as an example of one method that can be helpful for healing our body and mind. And then at the end, we'll have time for question and answer. So I'll do my best to answer any questions you might have on this subject. Okay, so as I mentioned just now, in Buddhism, it is said that our mind and our body are interconnected and interrelated. And mind is considered a very important topic, a very important subject. And one reason that it's important is because our mind plays a very big role in our well-being or our health. In the sense that some aspects of our mind, what we normally call negative aspects of the mind, these can lead to sickness, ill health, physical problems, or physical ill well-being. And on the other hand, other aspects of the mind that we call positive aspects of the mind lead to happiness and good health. So let me just clarify what I mean by negative aspects and positive aspects. So within our mind is quite vast and complex. There's many different things, many different aspects, or different states of mind, different attitudes in our mind. And some of these we call negative. And the reason that they're called negative is because of the kind of effect that they have. They have a negative effect or a negative result. And what that means is they cause problems. Yeah? Like all of us want to be happy, want to feel good. We don't want to have discomfort or problems or any kind of unhappy experience. And yet, even though we don't want that, that does sometimes happen. Okay? Just as an example of this, one of the best examples of a negative state of mind that causes problems is anger or hatred. which we sometimes experience. We sometimes find ourselves getting angry and even feeling hatred. And if you could turn your attention inside of yourself and look at your state of mind, look at how you feel, what it's like to be angry, what it's like to have anger and hatred in your mind, then it's obvious that it's very uncomfortable. It's not a comfortable state of mind. It's not a comfortable feeling, but you feel very uncomfortable, very disturbed, restless, unpeaceful. If it's very strong anger, then you might even feel like you're burning up inside. Not literally, but it's as though your mind is on fire. Okay, so it's not a comfortable and peaceful experience, but just the opposite to that. Okay, and then when we get angry, if we get more and more angry, and then we start to express our anger or act out our anger through our words and our actions, then this uncomfortable feeling that we have inside of us spreads to others. We make other people uncomfortable. That's very obvious if we look at how we feel when we're around somebody else who's angry, right? If you have an angry relative, aunt or uncle or grandparent or parent or friend or boss, right? So when that person gets angry and their face gets red and twisted and their voice gets very loud and aggressive, and they start saying kind of very unpleasant words, and the tone of their voice unpleasant as well, and their body language as well becomes quite ferocious and aggressive. So when you're around somebody who's angry, then how do you feel? Do you feel sort of relaxed and comfortable and happy, and you kind of want to stay in that situation with that person? Or do you feel like uncomfortable and tense and frightened, and you want to get out of there as quickly as possible because you're not quite sure what this person might do or say to you, right? So if we think about our experience, how we feel when we're around somebody else who gets angry, then we can understand how other people feel when they are around us when we get angry. And then it's very obvious that anger produces unpleasant feelings, uncomfortable feelings, not only in yourself who's getting angry, but in other people around you who are subject to your anger. So that's an example of a negative state of mind. And the reason we call it a negative state of mind is because of the effect it has on ourselves and on other people. It produces unpleasant, uncomfortable feelings. Okay? So according to Buddhism, then, it's negative aspects of the mind, negative states of mind like anger, that produce sickness and problems. Then on the other hand, there are some aspects of our mind that are positive, and the reason that we call these positive is because they have a very positive effect, a good effect on yourself when you have these experiences, and on people around you, towards whom you behave with that kind of attitude. So one of the best examples of this would be the feeling of loving kindness, compassion, which is when we genuinely care about other people. We have kindness, caring, and we're concerned about their well-being. We respect them. We're considerate of them. We don't want to harm them. We don't want to cause them problems or pain. And instead we want to take care of them, make sure that they have what they need and that they're happy and peaceful and comfortable. Okay, so when we have those kinds of feelings towards other people, then in our own mind, the way our mind is, the feeling we have inside of ourselves is very nice. We feel kind of pleasant and comfortable, peaceful, happy. It's a very pleasant state of mind. And then when we behave towards other people with those kinds of attitudes, the way that they feel will also be very comfortable and pleasant. So again, we can reflect on our own experience. If we have the experience of being around somebody who is very kind, caring, compassionate, considerate, right? Smiling and speaking in a friendly way, treating us in a respectful, friendly way. So when we're with somebody like that, we feel kind of very nice, very comfortable, very happy. We like being around somebody like that. We we want to be around someone like that as much as we can and continue to be treated in that way. Okay? So the same is true with other people. When we have those kinds of feelings, kindness, compassion, caring, and we treat other people with those feelings, then that makes them feel good, gives them good feelings. So loving kindness, compassion then have positive effects, positive results, both for yourself, the one who has those feelings, and for the other people towards whom you're behaving with those feelings. So that's just to illustrate what I mean by negative aspects of the mind and positive aspects of the mind. So again, negative attitudes or negative aspects lead to sickness and other kinds of problems. Positive aspects of the mind lead to health, good health and happiness and peace and all kinds of good experiences. So this was explained by the Buddha more than 2,600 years ago. But we also find that today, doctors, Western doctors and scientists are talking in the same way. They're also talking about this, the role played by the mind in our health and in our happiness. And so, in case some of you have more faith, more trust in science than in what the Buddha said, then I'll just give some examples of what scientists are saying. Okay, so this is a quotation from a Western psychologist, Daniel Goleman, who is the author of several books, including one called Emotional Intelligence, which I think was quite a bestseller, and I think there's been a few follow-ups to that. So he is writing these words in the introduction to a book called The Healing Power of Mind, which I'll talk about more later, because if you're interested in this subject, this is a very good book to refer to. So this is what Daniel Goleman says. He's talking about how modern science has discovered that mind and body are not separate and independent. And he says, one sign of the strength of the connection between mind and body is the finding in an analysis of more than 100 studies linking emotions and health that people who are chronically distressed, whether anxious and worried, depressed and pessimistic, or angry and hostile, have double the average risk of getting a major disease in the ensuing years. Smoking increases the risk of serious disease by 60%, chronic emotional distress by 100%. This makes distressing emotion almost double the health risk compared with smoking. I'll repeat that. So having chronic emotional distress, which can include being anxious and worried, being depressed and pessimistic, or being angry and hostile. Okay, so if you're a person who is chronically caught up in those emotions, then you have, this increases your risk of getting a serious disease by 100%. So it's even worse for your health than smoking cigarettes. Researchers in the new scientific field of psychoneuroimmunology, which studies the biological links between mind, brain, and the immune system, are rapidly filling in the missing mechanisms that connect mind and body. The emotional centers of the brain, they are discovering, are tightly linked not just to the immune system, but also to the cardiovascular system. When we are chronically stressed, when the body is continually catapulted into the fight or flight response with its surging stress hormones, it weakens the immune system's ability to fight off viruses and nip budding cancers, even as it primes the heart to escalate blood pressure and pump more frantically to prepare the body for emergency. The end result is that our vulnerability to diseases of every category is increased. So stress is bad for us. By contrast, a mind at peace with itself protects the body's health. That principle is fundamental in traditional Tibetan medicine, an ancient system that has never lost sight of the crucial link between mind and body. Okay, so there's a Western scientist talking about the connection between mind and body, and especially between distressing emotions, or what we would call in Buddhism negative emotions, and the risk of contracting serious disease. And in another book written by my teacher, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, called Ultimate Healing, there's a reference to another Western scientist, Fritjof Capra, who's actually a physicist, and he interviewed a number of well-known doctors and psychologists about the causes of cancer. And their research showed that the source of cancer lies in negative attitudes and can be cured by generating positive attitudes. Okay? So that's supporting what the Buddha spoke about more than 2,600 years ago. Also, there's a book called Anger Kills, written by a doctor of Duke University in America. And so research shows the connection between anger and various illnesses such as heart disease, high blood pressure, and even cancer. So having a habit of getting angry, being angry, losing your temper, and so on, again, will increase the risk of serious physical illness. Okay, so how does that work? How does it happen that certain states of mind, disturbing emotions, distressing emotions, or negative attitudes lead to sickness and other problems? So I'll explain this according to Buddhism, and I advise you to really pay attention to this explanation, because you may not find it easy to understand, but if you pay attention and try not to let your mind wander away and think about other things, then you might get some understanding of it. So according to Buddhism, the very root, or the original cause, original source of sickness as well as other kinds of problems lies in an attitude that we all have, which is called self-grasping. Okay? Or it's also called ignorance. Sometimes it's called self-grasping ignorance. So it's a kind of attitude that is confused about who we are, about our real nature, the real nature of ourself, our me, I. Okay? So the way that this attitude functions is that it causes us to believe that we have some kind of real self or I or me. So it has to do with our own self-image, our own sense of who we are, how we exist, our very existence, okay? The sense of I or me that we all have. Like all of us have a sense, I am sitting in this room, listening to this talk, feeling happy or feeling bored or wondering if I want to get up and walk out or whatever. Okay, so we all have a sense of an I, right? Sitting here in this room, in this body. Okay? So the way that we feel about our I, our self, me, is that we feel there's some kind of something very real and sort of permanent, always there, always existing, never changing, always the same, and sort of existing in a very independent way. like all by itself, independent of everything else, sort of autonomous, existing completely from its own side. Okay, so this is something quite subtle, we don't necessarily realize it in a very obvious way, but it's something quite subtle. It becomes more obvious when we have some kind of emotional experience, like, for example, if somebody insults you, right? If somebody puts on a nasty expression on their face and then says some really nasty words to us, you blah, blah, blah. Something really painful, really unpleasant that we don't really want to hear, okay? So if someone looks at us like that and says that kind of words, those kind of words to us, then we'll probably feel a very strong sense of I, me, like, how could you talk to me like that? Who do you think you are? Or don't you know who I am? Or, something like that, some kind of very strong reaction, yeah? So in that kind of situation, our sense of self, our sense of I becomes much more vivid, much more clear, much more like something really existing, yeah? Okay, so anytime we have any kind of strong emotion, then our sense of self, this sense of a real, solid, permanent, independently existing self becomes much more obvious. It sort of rears its head. It doesn't stay kind of subtle and quiet, it becomes very big and strong and powerful. So even though we have this feeling of a self, and it seems so real, so unquestionable, like, we normally never question if we exist like that or not, but we just accept it, we just assume that we exist that way. So even though this is how it appears, the reality is, according to the Buddha, what the Buddha discovered, the reality is that this sense of a real permanent self is like an illusion or a dream, a fantasy, that it's just created by the mind. I think a dream is a good analogy because when we sleep and have a dream, then these images appear. This whole kind of movie appears, and it seems very real while we're asleep and dreaming. But when we wake up, it disappears, and then we realize, oh, that was only a dream. It was only in my mind. It didn't really happen. Unfortunately, because, like, for example, if you dreamed that you won the lottery, yeah, you won $1 million lottery. So in your dream, you'd be very excited and very happy. But then you wake up, and there's no $1 million there. So this sense of a real permanent I or self is similar to that. It's just something created by our mind, but it doesn't really exist. Okay? Not really. In the same way the dream appears to our mind but doesn't really exist. And yet, most people, the vast majority of people, don't realize that. And we just go through life just believing that we have this real self. And then we grasp at it, we get very attached to it, very caught up in it. We regard it as the most important thing in our life. It's like the center of our life, the center of the world, the center of the universe, right? Most of the thoughts that we have, if you examine your mind, examine your thoughts, yeah? Most of the thoughts that we have throughout the day are about I, about me. I want this, I want that, I need to do this, I need to do that, I want to have this experience, I want to buy that. We don't have that many thoughts about other people, what's good for them, what will benefit them. Most of the thoughts we have are about me, 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 me. So we're very much caught up in that sense of self or I, as if it's completely real, when in fact it isn't. So then this basic attitude of believing in a real self and then being attached to this real self, this becomes the basis for all of our experiences. Okay, so here we are, we have this feeling like, there's this real, permanent, solid I. We grasp at that, we're attached to that. And then we kind of look out at the world around us. And with this sense of self or I, also develops a sense of what we like and what we don't like. what is pleasant and what is unpleasant, what's good for me and what isn't good for me. Okay, so we have this set of values or concepts about what's good and bad. Then when we deal with the world, with other people and things around us, we tend to judge things according to this set of values. So certain people that we meet fit into our idea of what is good, what is attractive, what is interesting, what makes me happy, what makes me feel good, what gives me pleasure. So towards those people, then we have attitudes of liking and then kind of attraction, and then go on to feel a sort of attachment. Like we want those people to be around, to have them there in a position where we can deal with them, have time, spend time with them, have access to them, keep on receiving that nice energy that we feel from them and that we enjoy so much, and we want to keep it going. So we want to make sure those people are around us. So then we develop relationships with them and try to make sure that we have continued contact with them. And then other people that we meet, we have the opposite reaction to. They fit into our ideas of what's bad, what we don't like, what's disturbing to me or makes me unhappy or uncomfortable. So towards those people, then we have the reaction of sort of dislike, aversion. We want to push them away, or we want to stay away from them as much as we can. We don't want to talk to them or spend time with them or give them any of our energy. Okay? So the feelings we have towards those people are kind of negative ones, like dislike, aversion, being critical and judgmental, even hostile, angry, hateful, or fearful, frightened. You know, we may feel frightened that, oh, this person might harm me, might be a cause of problems for me. Okay? So we have these two very strong reactions, liking and attachment towards people we decide are good people, we like them. Then anger, aversion, fear towards people we decide are bad, we don't like them. And the same happens not just with people, but with other kinds of phenomena, with objects that we see, things we see or hear, smell, odors that we smell, taste. So everything we see, everything we experience, we also have these kinds of reactions, liking some things, disliking other things. So there are three attitudes here. The first one is self-grasping, attachment to ourself. And we can call that ego, just to make it simple. Let's call that ego, okay? So very much concerned about I, me, myself as the center of everything. Everything has to revolve around me. I always have to take care of myself first and like that. So that's the one attitude. Then on the other hand, there's attachment or grasping. And on the other side, aversion or anger or hatred. So those three attitudes, which kind of form a triangle, you might say, are what are called in Buddhism the three poisons. They're called poisons because, poison is something that is harmful. Yeah? If we know that a certain substance is poisonous, right? Like this liquid in this bottle, if somebody tells you this is poison, or if it has a great big sign, that sign, the skull with the crossbones through it. That's kind of the symbol of poison. So if there's a big skull and crossbones on the outside of this bottle, then we would feel kind of frightened, even to touch this, much less to put it inside of us. Because we just know that poison is harmful. If we drink it or even touch it, then it can make us sick, maybe even kill us. So poison is something harmful. So in the same way, these attitudes, these states of mind of self-grasping and attachment and aversion or anger, these are also poisonous because when they're in our mind, they make our mind unpeaceful, disturbed, sick, kind of sick, unhealthy, diseased. Okay? So as soon as they're in our mind, just the fact that they exist in our mind makes our mind in an unhealthy state, in an unpeaceful, disturbed state. And they can also lead to other kinds of problems, other kinds of negative attitudes, such as jealousy, feeling jealous of somebody who we think has more than we do and we want what they have, feeling proud and arrogant, I'm better than other people, and we look down on other people and treat them with arrogance and with unkindness, and lots of other kinds of disturbing negative attitudes. And another thing that happens with these three poisons is that they incite us to act, to do actions. And the actions that we are motivated to do by these poisonous attitudes usually become causes of more problems and suffering. Like, for example, if we feel angry at somebody, then we might speak words that are hurtful to them. We might insult them. And in very extreme cases, of course, anger will incite people to commit acts of violence, such as murder, or beating somebody up, or robbing, or rape. Okay? Actions that actually inflict physical suffering on other people, other beings. So, whenever we do an action like that, which is a negative action, a harmful action, then the result of that is some imprint or seed will be left on our mind, our consciousness, that stays on our mind. When our mind travels through time into the future, then sometime in the future, later on, that seed will become the cause of meeting with some kind of unfortunate circumstance, such as getting sick. So actually in the Buddhist teachings, it's said that one of the worst negative actions, the most harmful action we can do is killing or taking the life, destroying the life of another person or another living being. One of the karmic results, the results that happen later on from doing that action, is that we ourselves will experience physical problems, such as being killed ourselves, or another thing that can happen is having bad health, having health problems, getting sick. And sometimes it can happen that even though you have a lot of sickness, you try to go to different doctors, get different kinds of treatments, but nothing works, nothing helps you, so you can't recover, you can't be cured of your sickness. So that's one of the results of the act of killing. Okay? So if we inflict suffering on somebody else's body, then the result that we will experience later on is that we ourselves will have suffering with our body. That kind of makes sense, doesn't it? Right? We get back the same kind of suffering that we inflict on somebody else. So according to Buddhism, the main cause of experiencing sickness or any other kind of problem is within ourselves. It's the imprints left on our mind by our own past actions, which were done motivated by negative states of mind, such as anger or greed or self-grasping, selfishness, and so on. So some people will question that, have doubt about that, because it's commonly believed that sickness comes from external causes, such as being exposed to certain viruses, or unhealthy food, pollution in the water or in the air or in the food that we eat, and so on. It's external things which are the cause of getting sick. But if that were true, then everybody who's exposed to the same conditions should react in the same way. In other words, should get sick. But that doesn't happen, does it? There can be some kind of virus going around, some kind of epidemic going around, and many people are exposed to that virus, living in the same kind of condition, same kind of situation where that kind of sickness can arise. But some people get sick and other people do not. Okay? So many people breathe the same air, drink the same water, eat the same kind of food. Some people get sick, some people get cancer, and other people do not. Okay? So if it were only the external conditions that were the cause of getting sick, then everybody in that same situation could get sick, but that doesn't happen. Just as an example of this, a friend of mine the other day said that he had dinner with some friends of his in a very nice, expensive restaurant. The next day, one of his friends called him up and he said, "Hey, did you get sick?" "I got sick. I had to go to the bathroom 4 times. So my friend didn't get sick, even though they ate the same food, right? They shared the same dishes, same food. So one guy got sick, diarrhea, food poisoning, but others didn't. Okay? So how can that be? If the cause is only in the external situation, the external conditions. So the Buddhist explanation of this is that for sure there are external conditions. There can be pollution in the water, in the food, in the air. There can be food which is contaminated. There can be viruses and bacteria going around. But those are not the main cause for getting sick. The main cause is in our own mind. It's the imprints left on our mind by our past actions, negative actions, harmful actions that we did, motivated by negative attitudes such as anger and hatred. So you don't have to believe that. I'm just explaining. This is how it's explained in Buddhism. But whether you can accept it and believe it is up to you. Okay? The Buddha never said we had to believe everything that he said. He said we should use our own wisdom, our own intelligence, and consider what he said, check it up, analyze it, examine it, and decide for ourselves if we think it's true or not. Anyway, in Tibetan medicine, which traces its origins to teachings of the Buddha, explains that all sicknesses originate from these 3 poisonous attitudes. So just to give a little bit of explanation of that, that's this book. Tibetan medicine, by the way, is natural medicine. It's similar to Chinese medicine. It uses various herbs and minerals rather than chemicals. So according to Tibetan medicine, physical sicknesses are classified into 3 main divisions. The first is disharmony of wind or energy, which I think in Chinese is qi, which is generally centered in the lower part of the body, and is cold by nature, is caused by desire or attachment. Okay? So that's one category of disease associated with the poisonous attitude of desire or attachment. Then disharmony of bile, which is generally in the upper body and is hot, maybe heaty as Chinese say, is caused by hatred. So hatred, anger is the second cause of this kind of sickness. And then disharmony of phlegm, which is generally centered in the head and is cold by nature, is caused by ignorance or self-grasping. So those 3 poisonous attitudes of desire or attachment, anger or hatred, and then ignorance or self-grasping are associated with the 3 main kinds of illness. And then those branch out into many other kinds of illnesses or sicknesses. So anyway, that's just a little bit about how the Buddhist would explain the relationship between our mind, and in particular the negative or disturbing aspects of the mind, the poisonous states of mind, and then our health, whether we are sick or healthy. But these 3 attitudes of self-grasping, attachment and hatred are not permanent aspects of the mind. So this is the good news. The bad news is that we have these poisonous states of mind that cause sickness and other problems. But the good news is that they're not permanent. They're not things which are going to be stuck in our mind forever and ever, and there's nothing we can do about them, nothing that we can do to get rid of them. So according to Buddhism, our mind is by nature clear and pure in the sense that it is not permanently, inherently one with negative aspects of the mind or the poisonous states of mind, okay? But rather, the nature of our mind is sometimes compared to the sky or to space, in that its nature is vast, clear, pure, spacious, unlimited, okay? And just as sometimes in the sky or in space we have clouds, well, we have pollution, so we have various kinds of obstructions that come into the sky, but those are not permanently there. They are things that come temporarily and later will be cleared away. Like if there's pollution, sometimes the sky is very polluted for a while, but then there's a rainfall, a storm, it rains a lot, or there's a big wind that comes, and after the storm, after the wind, the sky is clear again, the pollution is gone, so the sky is restored to its natural state of being clear and pure. So it's the same with our mind, okay? The nature of our mind, the natural state of our mind, is that it's clear and pure and spacious, and it's only temporarily obscured by negative states of mind, such as ignorance and hatred and attachment. So they are not permanent things, but they're things that come and go in our mind. And so this clear, pure nature of the mind is always there, just like the pure nature of the sky is always there, even when it's covered with clouds. Okay, the clouds don't chase the sky away; they just temporarily obscure the sky. The clear nature of the sky is always there because, for example, even if the sky is completely covered with clouds, but if you get into an airplane and you go up in the airplane, you'll eventually get above the clouds, and you'll get to the place where the sky is totally always pure and clear, no clouds. So it's always there. In the same way, the pure nature of our mind is always there, even when our mind sometimes gets very confused, full of angry thoughts, or very confused thoughts, or depression, or other kinds of very disturbing thoughts and emotions. But even though those thoughts are there, they're not permanent because they eventually go away, and they don't change or destroy or chase away the clear nature of the mind, because eventually those disturbing thoughts go away, and then we get back to a state of being sort of peaceful, calm, and clear, and happy. Another analogy that can help us understand this would be to think about water. I think that's a very apt analogy here in Singapore, because now we have recycled water, right? So again, the real nature, the natural state of water is to be clear and pure and healthy, right? But water sometimes becomes polluted because of garbage or chemicals or dirt or different things that get dumped into the water and make it not so clear and pure. But even though that garbage or pollution or dirt is in the water, it's not an inherent and permanent part of the water, because we can run the water through a recycling system and get rid of all the pollution, all the garbage, all the yucky stuff, and come out with, again, water that's clean and pure and healthy and fit to drink, right? So even though water can sometimes be temporarily polluted, that's not its real nature, okay? And the pollution can be removed, the water can be brought back to its natural, pure state. So the same is true for our mind, okay? So even though we have these poisons or negative states of mind, they're not permanent. They're not going to be there forever. They can be removed, And according to Buddhism, it's possible to eliminate them completely, to completely free our mind from everything that's negative, from anger and ignorance and attachment, jealousy, pride. Just get rid of these completely so that they're gone forever. They'll never come back. We'll never experience them again. And our mind will always be in a state that's very clear, pure, peaceful, and positive. That's what we call enlightenment, or Buddhahood, the state that the Buddha achieved. So we can all do that. We can all achieve enlightenment. And that's actually the goal, the ultimate goal of Buddhist teachings, Buddhist practice, is to bring our mind to a state of enlightenment. But for some people, that may sound very difficult, hard to accept, or hard to do. So they may feel, well, I'm not so sure about becoming enlightened. But even if we're not quite sure about working for enlightenment, becoming enlightened, it's still possible to work with Buddhist teachings, Buddhist methods, in a more temporal sense, like just trying to work on our mind now to make it less negative and more positive, to have fewer of the poisonous negative states of mind like anger and so on, to reduce those, to lessen them so they don't come up as much, and to increase the more positive aspects of the mind, such as love, compassion, kindness, so that those are in our mind more of the time and more strong and more pure. And if we do that kind of work, then we'll definitely experience more happiness and health, peace of mind, even in this lifetime. So Buddhist teachings, Buddhist methods that are for working on the mind, purifying the mind, can be used by people who are interested in being more healthy, more happy, having a longer life, having a better quality of life. So the point I'm trying to make here is that the mind is something very important. And if we really want to work on being healthy and having physical and mental well-being, then we should be concerned about our mind. And we can learn methods for working on our mind and bringing about less negative and more positive aspects of the mind. So it's important that we try to put at least some of our energy, some of the time and energy in our life for caring for our mind, not just caring for our body. I mean, of course our body is important, needs to be cared for, but remember that our body has a limited lifespan. It's only going to exist for a certain number of years, maybe 80 years, 90 years, 100 years at the most, and then it's going to run out of its time, run out of its life, and it's going to die. Whereas our mind is longer lasting, because even after our body dies, our mind will not die or disappear. It will continue to exist. Okay? So our mind will survive and continue to exist long after our body. So from that point of view also, it's important not to just spend our life, our time taking care of our body, making our body healthy and beautiful and attractive and slender and all of those things, because this body is going to end at some point, but to spend at least some of our time taking care of our mind, caring for our mental states. So then from the Buddhist tradition, there are various methods that we can use for working on our mind, caring for our mind, and reducing the negative, poisonous aspects of the mind and increasing the beneficial and positive aspects of the mind. And then this in turn will be helpful for our health, our well-being. So I'll just mention a few. There's many, but just to mention a few tonight. So one is the practice of ethics, living ethically. Okay. So this is a good place to start because this is easier compared to other practices such as meditation, which require much more energy and discipline and concentration and focus. So ethics has to do with more what we do with our body and with our speech. And the basis of ethics in Buddhism is refraining from doing things that are harmful, that cause harm, suffering, and problems to others. The most obvious example of that would be killing or taking the life of any person or any living being. So that's the greatest suffering that we can inflict on any other living being, is to take their life, destroy their life. Just as we would not want anyone to destroy our life, the same is true for everybody else. Nobody wants to have their life destroyed. Okay, and that includes not just human beings, but also animals and insects. They want to live as well, and they suffer. They're very frightened and experience pain and mental suffering as well when their life is destroyed. So killing is one example, but any other action that we might do with our body, such as physically harming someone or raping them, forcing them to have sex against their will, or using our speech to harm others by saying hurtful words, nasty words, critical words that hurt their feelings, or expressing words that cause disharmony between people who are friends, people who get along. We don't want them to get along, and so we say words that cause them to mistrust each other or become angry at each other, break up, no longer have a friendly, harmonious relationship. So those are some examples of actions that we can do that are negative, that are harmful, that create suffering. So if we do those kinds of actions, not only do we cause others to suffer, but we create suffering for ourselves as well. As I said before, those actions will leave imprints on our mind or consciousness that later on will create the cause for us to have problems, such as health problems, sickness. So ethics then means refraining from doing harmful actions. Then the opposite to that would be doing beneficial, helpful, positive actions as much as we can. So like opposite to killing would be saving lives. Okay, so in Buddhism we have this practice of liberating animals. Animals that are destined to be killed, you buy them and then release them, let them live, prevent them from that suffering of being killed. And this is actually a very helpful practice to do if you are facing health problems. My teacher, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, has one student, one Canadian woman, who is suffering from cancer. And she went through lots of operations and treatment, but nothing worked. And the doctors were kind of giving her up, like, they'd done everything they could and she still wasn't recovering, so they felt like there's nothing more they could do. Then she contacted my teacher, who advised her to do some meditation practice and also advised her to liberate animals. And she really took this advice seriously and liberated many thousands of animals. I think some of them were chickens that were going to be killed. So she bought them and she put them on a farm and made sure they would be taken care of and wouldn't be killed. And I think she also bought fish and released them into the sea, and worms that people in the West use for fishing. They put them on the end of their fishing hooks. So they buy the worms alive and then stick hooks through them and go fishing with them. So she bought those kind of worms and then released them. I think she just put them in her own yard. So anyway, thousands of animals. So then she also did the meditation practice that my teacher advised her to do. So then the next time she went back to the hospital for her checkup, the doctors were amazed to find that her cancer was gone. So it makes sense because, as I said before, killing, if we destroy life, that one of the results of that is that we ourselves will be sick, will suffer physical sickness, and we may not be able to find cures for our sicknesses. Yeah, so even if we go to lots of doctors, try different treatments, nothing works. So by releasing animals, you're doing the opposite kind of action to what you did originally, the original action that you did, which was the cause of your sickness. So you're sort of counteracting that negative karma from killing. There was also a case of when I was living here in Singapore, many years ago, there was this young boy who was just 17 years old who had cancer. And again, I think the family tried all kinds of different methods, but nothing seemed to be working. So then my teacher was visiting, and they brought this young boy to see my teacher. So my teacher spent quite a bit of time talking to him and gave him refuge, and then taught him some practices to do, some prayers and meditations. So apparently, for a while he did these practices, and he actually got better. He started to feel much better. He put on weight, felt good again. Then he stopped doing the practices because he felt, well, I'm okay now. I don't need to do those practices anymore. And apparently he also went fishing with his uncle. So then after that, he started to get sick again. He got very ill again. And the next time my teacher came to town, this boy was already, it was like hopeless. So he died shortly after that, unfortunately. So doing spiritual practices, such as prayer and meditation, and also liberating animals, can be very helpful. But then the danger is if we do those practices and then we start to get better, and then we think, okay, I'm okay now, I don't have to do those practices anymore. We give them up, and maybe we even go back to old habits, old bad habits. Then again, the causes of the sickness, the causes of our ill health can come back. Okay? So it's important to continue to do these practices continuously, not just for a short time. So from the Buddhist point of view, living ethically, ethical living is something we should do all through our life, not just for a short time, but as much as possible continuously try to refrain from doing negative actions, try to do virtuous, positive actions as much as possible. Another practice, another method from the Buddhist tradition, which is very helpful for healing, for health, is meditation. And as I say, that's more difficult to do than practicing ethics, because ethics is not that difficult. It's not so difficult to stop lying and cheating and saying hurtful words and so on, and killing and harming others. But meditation is more difficult because we have to be very strong and very disciplined. But still, even a little bit of meditation can be very helpful. One way it helps is that it helps us to be more relaxed and less stressed. And again, in the West, scientists, doctors are doing research and experiments into the effects of meditation, and finding that people who do a regular practice of meditation do experience less stress and are more relaxed, and that in turn has an effect on the body's health, being able to ward off disease and live longer. But meditation also is helpful because it helps us to become more aware of our thoughts, of our states of mind, what is going on in our mind. And by doing that, we can become more aware if there are any negative states of mind, like anger or jealousy or greed or selfishness, ego. So through meditation, we can notice these negative or poisonous states of mind when they're arising in our mind. By noticing them, then we can stop them, or we can turn our attention away from them, rather than just letting ourselves get caught up in them and follow them and act them out, which then just creates more causes of sickness and suffering. So through the practice of meditation, we become more aware, more mindful. There's this term in Buddhism, mindfulness, which means knowing what's going on, knowing what is happening in our mind. When we notice anger or jealousy, hatred, or the wish to do something negative, something harmful, we notice this coming up, then we can stop it, because we know that if I follow this, I'm just going to create problems for myself, problems for others. So meditation enables us to have more control and more choice over what happens in our mind, and in that way, less likely to create more causes of sickness and suffering. And So there's many different kinds of meditation practices, and at the end of the talk tonight I'll mention the 2 books which I was using as the basis for this talk. So if you're interested in particular methods for healing and overcoming health problems and so on, then both of these books have many different methods that can help you, meditation methods for healing and for health. And in case anyone feels that, meditation, that seems like something very religious, and I'm not sure if I want to do that, then a more sort of secular or non-religious counterpart to meditation would be something that there's one American, I think he's a psychologist. His name is Herbert Benson. Or maybe he's a doctor. He's from the Harvard Medical School. And he's done a lot of research into meditation. And he has come up with what he calls the relaxation response. And there's a number of books. I think one is called The Relaxation Response. And he says that if we bring about this state of relaxation, the way you do it, according to him, is sitting down, relaxing your body, and then repeating some word. You can choose whatever word you want. If you have some spiritual practice or spiritual beliefs, you could use a word associated with that. Like, for example, a Buddhist could use Buddha, the word Buddha, or you could use the word peace, or some other word that has some nice meaning to you. So you choose a word, and then you just keep repeating that word over and over again. And don't let your mind follow other thoughts. If other thoughts come, you just sort of ignore them, let them go, and go back to repeating this word. So that's basically the method that he teaches. And he says by doing this, then you learn to become more relaxed, and there are definite benefits. So studies have been done showing that people who do this practice regularly become more relaxed, have less stress, and even, I think they tried this out with students in school and found that there was improvement in their grades. Some of you may be interested in that. So actually just today, I went on the web, and there's a website. This Dr. Benson has a website in which he explains this relaxation response. So if any of you are interested in that, if you're not so comfortable with the idea of meditation, but feel more comfortable with a more sort of scientific approach, then you might look into that. Just type in Herbert Benson, and you'll get to his website. And then a last method, I mean, not that this is all there is, but just what I'm going to talk about tonight, is loving kindness and compassion. So I mentioned already, these are positive states of mind, positive aspects of the mind. And so if we can increase these states of mind, if we can increase our feelings of love, kindness, compassion, caring, consideration for others, respect, being nice to people as much as we can, then this will also have an effect on our health, because these qualities, these states of mind, as soon as we have them in our mind, they make our mind peaceful, happy, healthy, relaxed, calm. Okay, so they have an immediate effect, a positive effect on our state of mind, which in turn will have an effect on our health, because, the mind does have an effect on the body. So the more we can feel peaceful, calm, relaxed, and positive, then the less chance we'll have of creating the causes for serious illness. They also benefit us because by having these states of mind, we're less likely to engage in negative actions like killing or harming others through our actions or our words. And in that way, we won't be creating those actions that lead to sickness and suffering, other kinds of problems. So in Buddhism, there's lots of methods that we can use to increase these states of mind, to increase love, kindness, compassion. So the more we can fill our minds with these kinds of thoughts, the less space there will be in our mind for the negative attitudes, such as anger, hatred, the wish to harm others, or being stressed, or being selfish, being totally caught up in our own self and our own ego. Okay, so I'm just mentioning a few methods. Hopefully you'll be interested in these and want to look into them more. But what I'd like to do now is to just guide you in a meditation practice, one that can be helpful for your physical and mental well-being and health, just so you get a little bit of a taste of what's possible, what you can do. So, just to tell you what we're going to do, this meditation involves doing a little bit of visualization. So visualization means thinking in pictures or imagining, using the mind's ability to imagine. For the first part of the meditation, I'll ask you to imagine that when you are breathing in, when you're inhaling air, you imagine that along with the air that you're breathing in, you also breathe in very luminous, beautiful white light. Okay, so pure light, white light, very radiant, very beautiful, very blissful. And you imagine that this white light is all the positive energy that exists in the universe. The energy of compassion, universal compassion and love, caring about all living beings without exception, not leaving out anybody. Just as a mother has a little baby, and for her, her baby is so precious. She's thinking about her baby all the time, always looking after her baby's needs, making sure that it's fed, that it has, clean, dry clothes, that it's warm, that it's safe and protected. So totally attending to her baby's needs, making sure it doesn't have any suffering or problems, making sure it has everything it needs in order to be happy and comfortable. So that same kind of feeling that a mother has for her baby, the love, kindness, compassion that her mother has for her baby. So that compassion, which is in the minds of enlightened beings, the great enlightened beings in the universe, so they have that same feeling for everyone, for each of us, for every other living being, just totally caring about us, loving us, wanting to help us. So that energy of compassion, loving kindness, and wisdom, clearly seeing the true nature of all things, patience, and generosity. So whatever good qualities, whatever good energy that there is, totally pure, totally perfect, you imagine all of that good energy in the form of this radiant white light, and you're breathing that in. Imagine it coming into your body, and then filling your body completely. So with each breath that you take, just breathe normally. So with each breath that you take, imagine this white light coming in, and then going down through your body until it fills every part of your body, all the way down to your toes and your fingertips. And going down to the very subtle parts of your body, the cells of your body, the atoms, the subatomic particles of your body. So they become completely filled with this radiant white energy. So as this positive energy fills your body, imagine that it purifies any negative energy that you have, which can include sickness, pain, injuries, so any kind of physical problems that you have. They dissolve and disappear. Any harm you might have from spirits or black magic, and also on the level of the mind, any negative aspects of the mind that you have, anger, selfishness, pride, greed, and the negative karma that you've collected in the past, motivated by these negative attitudes. So all sickness and suffering and the causes of suffering are completely purified. They dissolve and disappear as your body becomes more and more full of this beautiful white light. If you wish to, if you feel more comfortable to do this, you can imagine the sickness and other negative energy leaving your body when you breathe out. So when you exhale the breath, you can imagine the negative energy that's inside of you goes outside of you in the form of dark energy, fog or smoke, pollution. So you expel that from your body. And then imagine that it just disappears in space. Don't worry that you're sending out negative energy, polluting the environment, creating problems for other people. So don't worry about that. Just imagine that negative energy dissolving and disappearing and becoming non-existent. So concentrate on each breath, breathing in white light of positive energy, breathing out dark smoke or pollution of negative energy. So with each breath, you become more and more pure and peaceful. So, before you open your eyes, see if you can have the feeling that you have been able to completely purify and transform yourself, your body and mind. You've been able to eliminate all the negative energy of your body and mind. You've been able to fill yourself completely, your whole body and mind, with positive energy, the energy of loving kindness, compassion, wisdom, and all other positive qualities. And then try to hold on to that feeling as long as you can without letting it disappear. So when you feel ready, you can open your eyes, relax. So that's a very simple meditation practice you can use. And you can add an additional part to this by imagining that the very pure, positive light comes from a figure such as the Buddha. So if you're a Buddhist, you feel comfortable to imagine the Buddha, or if you have a statue or a picture of the Buddha in a place where you're meditating, you can focus on that. And imagine that this very beautiful white radiant energy is coming from the Buddha, coming into you, filling you up. And if you're not a Buddhist, but you follow another religion or spiritual tradition, you may use a figure or image from that tradition that you're more comfortable with. Or you can just imagine in a general way that from all over the universe, from all the holy beings, the wise beings, the compassionate beings in the universe, they're sending this very beautiful, radiant white light to you, coming into you, filling you, your negative energy going out and disappearing. So that's a practice you can do on your own if you wish to. You could spend 5 minutes or 10 minutes doing it. And it's good if you can, when you finish, to, as I say, try to really feel that you have purified yourself. You managed to get rid of negative energy, fill yourself with positive energy. So by doing that, by having that view, that feeling, what we're doing is we're making ourselves more familiar with positive thoughts, states of mind, positive experiences, and learning to identify more with those kinds of attitudes, and learning to de-identify with the more negative kinds of attitudes. Because it doesn't mean that just after you having done this meditation, you're not going to have any more negative thoughts. You're never going to feel angry again or have bad thoughts in your mind again. That's not going to happen, probably. So you will have negative thoughts coming up again. You will have anger coming up again. But by making ourselves familiar with this kind of meditation practice, then we're starting to distance ourselves from our negative thoughts and negative energy, like anger, so that even when they do arise in our mind, we'll be more likely to say, no, this is something I don't want to associate myself with. I want to get rid of, because this is just the cause of sickness and problems and unhappiness for myself and others. Okay, so to wrap up, I've given a little bit of an explanation of how the body and the mind relate and affect each other, and some methods that are found within the Buddhist tradition for how we can work on our mind so that we make it more pure and positive, and that in turn will have an effect on our health. However, we shouldn't expect that we'll definitely have sort of miracles or instant cures. If we think that by doing meditation, all my sickness is going to go away, and I'm never going to get sick again, I'm never going to have any physical problems. So that kind of view is not very realistic. It can happen through the practice of meditation, other kinds of spiritual practices, living ethically and so on. It can happen that people can become cured of illness, and have other sorts of amazing experiences. But it doesn't always happen, because it also depends on other factors. For example, like how strong our karma is. However, even if we don't experience remarkable, miraculous cures, doing meditation, doing other kinds of spiritual practice can at least benefit us in the sense of making us more peaceful, more calm, more accepting of whatever sickness or problems we may have, so that we'll have less mental suffering. Yeah? So like, for example, a person may have cancer or other kind of serious illness, and they may start practicing meditation. Well, the cancer may go away, may be cured, but it may not. Even if it isn't cured, the person will definitely have a more peaceful mind, a more peaceful state of mind, and more ability to accept what's happening to them, less mental distress, mental suffering, So there will definitely be a change and a relief of the suffering that they're experiencing, and they'll be better able to cope with whatever's happening to them. Okay, so I've talked long enough. Sorry I kept going, but I'll stop now, and if anyone would like to ask a question, then please, you can go to the microphone or write it down on a piece of paper if you wish.
I got a question for you. Can we transform the anger into a positive action?
That's the question.
Yes.
Can we transform anger into positive action?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, there's different things we can do with anger. So I'll mention a few things. So hopefully some of these might be effective for you. If you are, or if someone is familiar with the practice of meditation, then one thing you can do with anger is to just observe it, to just watch it in a sort of detached way, in the same way that, for example, when we watch television, we sit on the sofa or we sit on a chair and the TV's over there and we're just watching what's happening on the TV, but we're not getting up and joining in the action, getting involved in the action, just observing it happen, then letting it go. So it is possible to do that with anger that arises in our mind, to just observe it in a detached way, in an objective way, not getting caught up in it, but just watching it and keeping a kind of neutral state of mind, not getting angry, but just observing our mind playing out the anger. So that's something that can be done, and if you do that, then the anger will just disappear, just like the TV program finishes and then you turn it off and it's over and done. But that's actually very difficult to do. It takes a lot of training before you can do that. For many of us, especially if we're just starting to work with things like anger, then we have the sort of bottom line, or the most important thing we should try to do with anger is to not act it out. Because as soon as we act out our anger, like speaking angry words or doing violent actions, then the karma that we create will be heavier, will definitely create more suffering. So we should try at least to keep the anger inside of us, not express it through our words and our actions. So in a situation like most of us have to deal with people, and we find ourselves in situations, and things often happen so fast that we find ourselves getting angry before we know it. And we're not in a situation where we can sit down and meditate. Huh? You're at work, or you're on the freeway, or, there's just so much going on. You can't just stop what you're doing and meditate. Okay, so if it's that kind of situation, then the first thing, the most important thing we should try to do is recognize that there's anger in the mind, and recognize that if we act out this anger, if I act this anger out, and if I say angry words, or if I do angry things, hurtful things, then this is really bad. I'm creating suffering for myself, suffering for the other person. So we should try at least to stop doing that. So one thing you might do is to try to just get some distance, walk away from the situation if you can, go someplace and try to calm down, yeah? And once your mind is more calm, if you can manage to calm your mind down, then you can go back and deal with that situation again. But if you try to deal with a situation where your mind is still full of anger, then it'll be much more likely that you'll blow up and act out your anger. So what you're asking is transforming the anger into something positive? Yeah. So I'm not sure what you mean by that, but anger can be very strong physical energy. You feel this very strong energy to do something. So maybe you could go and do something positive with that energy. Like go and do some physical work. Yeah? Carry a heavy load, or, I don't know, in the West, they have this saying that if you feel angry, go out and chop wood. I I think in Singapore nobody chops wood because nobody needs to build a fire here, but I think the idea is, transform that anger into something that's not going to be harmful to other people. Sometimes people ask about, like in the West, in Western psychology, then there's this technique, if you feel angry at somebody, then take it out on a pillow, beat up a pillow, instead of beating up a person, yeah? I remember one lady I met, she said in her house, in her family, they had this big stuffed frog, like a stuffed animal in the shape of a frog, and that was the object. Anybody who got angry, whether it was the parents or the kids, when they got angry, they would go and beat up the frog. The poor frog. Well, that's helpful in the sense that at least we're expelling that energy or getting that energy out in a way that's not hurting anybody else. Yeah? So I don't know if that's what you mean by positive. At least it's not hurting anybody. But in Buddhism, it said, like for example, Thich Nhat Hanh, the famous Vietnamese Zen teacher, when he was asked about this, he was asked, is it okay to beat up a pillow when you're angry? And he said, well, it's better than beating up a person. However, even after you beat up the pillow, you might feel calm, but you haven't really dealt with the cause of your anger. You haven't looked into your mind and asked yourself, why did I get angry? And so without doing that, the chances are there'll be another situation later on where, again, you'll get angry. So it's much better if you can look into your mind, work with your mind, try to understand the causes of your anger, and try to work on those. Try to work on eliminating the causes of your anger. But that's something that takes time. It takes time and energy. So is that okay? Because I got a few more questions here. Okay, one question here is, what might be the causes for self-grasping? So that's a good question. According to Buddhism, well, it's said that our mind has been existing for all of time. It never started anywhere. It didn't have a beginning. It wasn't created by anybody. It didn't just suddenly appear out of nowhere. But it's always been existing. And as long as our mind has been existing, then this attitude of self-grasping has also been existing in our mind. So in other words, it's always been there. We've always had this problem, not just in this life, but past lives as well. We've always had this problem of self-grasping, ignorance. Never managed to be free from it. Now that may sound difficult to accept, difficult to believe, and it also may sound kind of depressing, like, oh, it's always been there, such a long time. But even though it's always been there in the mind, that doesn't mean that it always will be there. So it can be eliminated. And the way we eliminate self-grasping is by developing wisdom. Wisdom that sees things as they are, that recognizes that the self that we've been grasping at, believing in, attached to all this time, is just an illusion, a fantasy, a creation of the mind, a hallucination. So once we see that, then we're free of it. We don't believe in it anymore. We're no longer caught up in it. And so it's a bit like, I said, it's like the dream. Grasping at the self is like a dream. So when we have a dream, especially a nightmare, like sometimes we have these very scary dreams, and we wake up. When we wake up, we're still feeling scared. We're still kind of caught in the illusion that there was somebody chasing us, or trying to kill us, or there was some horrible monster or demon or something. So when we wake up, our heart is beating, we might feel sweating, terrified, might even be screaming. But then once we're awake and we realize, I'm awake, and there's no monster, there's nobody chasing me, that was just a dream. So once we have that awareness, that recognition that it was only a dream and not real, then our mind becomes calm, becomes peaceful, becomes free of that illusion and the fear that goes along with that illusion. So it's similar. The belief in the self is like a dream. It's like dreaming. And we're still asleep and dreaming and believing in the dream. But we can wake up. It's possible for us to kind of wake up. Sometimes Buddha is called the awakened one, because Buddha has awakened from this sleep of ignorance, believing in a real self. So he woke up and he realized, there is no such self. Once you realize that, once you have that awareness, you're free from it. You no longer believe in it, you no longer grasp at it, and you're free from all the emotions, all these painful, disturbing emotions that come with self-grasping, such as, being so fearful about our own existence, being so angry at other people that we see as threatening, being so attached to people that we see as helpful to us, and wanting them always to be there, even though it's impossible for them to always be there. And then all the fears and worries, anxieties, depression and sadness and grief and so on, all of these painful experiences come from believing in a self and grasping in a self. So when we wake up and realize, that self isn't real, then we're free from that illusion and we're free from all these painful, disturbing emotions. So another question is, not sure if I understand this one, but anyway. Why, when you're in pain, it comes from the heart? What about pain in your toe? Does that come from your heart? Whoever wrote this question, do you want to clarify what you meant? Are you talking about mental pain, emotional pain? Yeah? I mean, we do sometimes feel pain in our heart. I don't know if you mean the physical heart, the organ that's sitting in there. I mean, maybe you better go and see your doctor if you're having pain in your heart. But then Buddhism, we talk about the heart chakra, which is this energy center here in the center of our chest. And this is actually a very important place because our mind is a kind of energy that flows through our body, but it's the main headquarters of our mind, or home of our mind, is here in this, what we call the heart chakra, which is, it's not a physical thing, it's not a physical organ. If you cut open the body, you wouldn't find anything there, but it's a psychic thing. It's something very subtle, an energy center. Okay? So that's like the center of our mind and our mental energy. And sometimes things can get congested, especially painful emotions. Like we talk about broken heart, right? That expression, broken heart. When someone you love rejects you or hurts you or falls in love with somebody else and says, I don't love you anymore, I don't want to be with you anymore, then we feel this pain here. And I don't think that means the physical heart, the organ that pumps blood. I think that means this part here, isn't it? Right? This feels very sore and very painful, like somebody stabbed us or shot an arrow through us, right? So that's to do with our mind, our mental energy, rather than the physical body, yeah? So, I don't know, I'm just guessing, whoever wrote this question, that you're talking about that kind of pain, that the emotional pain that comes from maybe something we want doesn't happen, or, like I say, someone who loves us hurts us or rejects us. So that's something we don't want to happen, but it happens to us. So through meditation and working with our mind, then we can learn to reduce that kind of pain, because the more we understand our mind, the more we understand our emotions, our feelings, our attitudes, and the more we can learn to work with our emotions, reduce the painful negative emotions and increase the more positive emotions, then definitely we will experience less pain in our mind. Because the pain, I'm not talking about physical pain here, I'm talking about the emotional pain. The emotional pain that we experience usually has to do with our sense of self, our ego, our being more concerned with ourself and not so concerned about others. So when we're very caught up with ourself, me, I, what I want, what's good for me, what isn't good for me, the more we're caught up with our sense of self and our own needs, then the more we are vulnerable to emotional pain. Yeah? Because then this person we care about, we want them to love us forever and ever and always be nice to us and never hurt us and never say anything bad to us. So that's all to do with I, with me, what I want, what I need, not so much the other person. So this may sound outrageous to you, but I'm going to say it anyway. If somebody decides they love somebody more than us, they're more happy with somebody else rather than us. If we really care about that person's happiness, if we really are more concerned with the other person's happiness than for our own happiness, then it would make sense that we would say, well, okay, if you really are more happy with this other person, if that person makes you more happy than me, if you really love that person more than me, and you'll be more happy with that person than with me, then please go, because I want you to be happy. That's very hard to do, isn't it? But why is it hard? Why is it so hard to do? It's because of me. More concerned with me. I want. It's like this little child inside that says, but I want, me. But we can change that. Yeah? The more we can work on our mind and decrease our sense of self and our grasping at self and our, this making ourself our number one priority, the more we can decrease that, and the more we can increase our love and our compassion, our focus on others, what's good for them, what will make them happy, then that will come more easily and more naturally. It won't be so painful. I know of someone who contracted cancer and he is not accepting it. Rather, he is feeling very distressed. What can I do to help? Just the first thing that popped into my mind was a book that I read recently, if I can remember the name of the book. It was called I Don't Know What to Say. That's right. The name of the book was I Don't Know What to Say. And it was written by a doctor, Canadian doctor, who for many years worked in cancer ward of hospital. And he recognized that it often happens that, somebody gets sick, like a serious sickness like cancer, which is a pretty heavy, pretty intense sickness. Then often the friends and even the relatives of that person have this problem of not knowing what to say. Sometimes they won't even go and visit that person, not because they don't care, but because they don't know what to say. Yeah? So it's a very good book that talks about what it's like for the person who finds out that they have a serious illness like cancer. Yeah? Now, maybe most of us haven't yet had that experience, but if it did happen to us, if we go for some tests to our doctor, and then our test result come, doctor says to us this dreaded C word. Yeah, cancer, you got cancer. So what is that like? What is the experience like to be told that you have cancer? So if we haven't been through that experience ourselves, it's hard to know, it's hard to imagine what we're going to feel like, what that experience is going to be like. But there are certain common reactions that people have. And so this doctor, the name of the author of this book is Robert Buckman, Buckman. If any of you are interested, you might be able to find this book in the library or bookshops here. So he explains the different kind of emotions that a person who finds out they have cancer goes through, such as shock and disbelief, difficulty to accept, distress and despair, and anger. Okay, so different emotional responses that this person will have, And then he explains how you can help this person, how you can work with this person, how you can deal with them. And I remember one of the things he says is that it's helpful to understand that people change and their emotional states, their emotional responses can change. So at one point in time, like if you go and visit this person, if they're in the hospital, one day you go and visit them, and they may be completely overwhelmed by depression and despair and sadness, and you'll think, oh dear, this is terrible. But the next day you go, and the person is okay again. They're happy, they're cheerful, they're accepting of what's happened to them. So that's one thing I remember, which could be helpful for the person who wrote this question, that even though this person at this point in time is having a hard time accepting, that's completely normal, and it most probably will take this person some time to get to the point where they can accept. But he also mentioned in this book that some people never get to that point. Some people never get to the point where they're able to accept what's happening to them. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to be told bad news. So some people are like that. And it doesn't help to push them. You can't push a person. You can't force a person to accept something that their mind just doesn't want to accept. Their mind is just going to close. So then if the person is like that, you just have to accept, try to be as kind as you can, try to relieve their suffering as much as you can. Anyway, I recommend that book for whoever wrote this question, because I think it was very helpful and it offered a lot of advice on how to deal with someone who is going through that very difficult experience in their life. So in other words, don't worry if they're distressed at this point in time. That's something that may change. During the meditation practice, you mentioned earlier, if a person has no negative thoughts during exhalation, what should he visualize? That's great. Well, I don't mean that you have to have negative thoughts at the moment, at the time you're doing the meditation in order to, expel negative thoughts. But you can just think in general of negative thoughts that may have come up in your mind in the past, negative thoughts that might come up in your mind in the future, because our mind has the potential to have negative thoughts, even though there may not be any negative thoughts right now at this moment in time, but 5 minutes later, negative thoughts could arise in our mind. Yeah? So you can just think about the potential to generate negative thoughts, the potential negative thoughts, that can arise. And just imagine getting rid of that so that there'll be less or fewer negative thoughts arising in our mind in the future. Yeah? Okay, then the last two questions were asking recommendations about books. So I did want to mention the two books which I have here on the table. You might be able to find these in Singapore. So one is called Ultimate Healing, The Power of Compassion by Lama Zopa Rinpoche, who's my teacher. So he talks about the mind and then various practices, meditations, including animal liberation and medicine Buddha practice and so on, that can be useful both for yourself, if you yourself are going through illness and you want to heal yourself, but you can also use these to help somebody else, someone you know who's suffering from illness and you'd like to help them. So you can also use these practices to help somebody else. And the other book is called The Healing Power of Mind. Looks like this. The author is also a Tibetan, Tulku Tundrup, and it's published by Shambhala. So this book is also similar. It talks about the mind and how the causes of sickness and suffering come from our mind. Then also contains a lot of different methods, some of them very simple exercises, some of them more profound. So those are two books about healing. And then somebody else asks, what book do you recommend for meditation for a beginner? So I guess maybe I can mention the book How to Meditate, which I wrote, for sale out there. will find that book useful. And I think there are many other books as well. I just can't think of any titles right now. There's one called Mindfulness in Plain English, written by a Sri Lankan Venerable, Gunaratana, I believe, who lives in America. And that's very easy and simple to understand. Then books by Joseph Goldstein, American teacher of Vipassana meditation. One of his books is called The Experience of Insight. I can't remember exactly other books that he's written, but those are also very good books. Okay, so, in your opinion, is having cancer associated with karma? Definitely. I mean, there could be other causes as well, such as stress, such as the food that we eat, the lifestyle that we live. But from the Buddhist point of view, the main cause is karma. But we shouldn't think that karma is like destiny or fate, that like we have this karma to get cancer and there's no way we can prevent it, no way we can do anything about it. Because karma isn't something fixed. It's changeable. We can purify karma. So again, in Buddhism, there's lots of methods that we can use to purify our mind, purify our karma, clear away the causes we've created in the past to experience sickness like cancer. Okay, so it's not like a hopeless case. It's not like, we're destined to have some bad experience and there's nothing that can be done about it. So we can definitely purify. And actually the meditation we did tonight is a meditation practice that can be used to purify. So you can imagine that whatever negative karma you have to get cancer or to get any other kind of illness, even if it hasn't yet manifested, it might be there in the mind and manifest later. So you can imagine that being purified by the white light or sent out with your breath when you exhale. So imagine that karma going out. And then of course try your best to refrain from creating that kind of karma again by killing, by harming, by doing actions harmful to others. Okay, so let's stop here because we've gone over the time already and I think they have to close up before 10. Okay, so let's just finish by spending a few moments making a mental dedication of the energy, positive energy we created here tonight by coming together and starting with a positive motivation, the wish to benefit ourselves and others, and then putting the effort into listening attentively, thinking about trying to understand this talk, which is all about how we can heal ourselves, how we can be more beneficial to others, and so on. So through this we've generated a lot of positive energy or merit, which is the cause of happiness, of good experiences. So let's dedicate this that it will be beneficial to all beings. May it bring about freedom from suffering and problems, sickness, pain, delusions and karma for all living beings. And may it bring about only good experiences, peace, happiness, good health, long life, freedom from war, conflicts, hunger, sickness, and so on. And ultimately, enlightenment for all living beings. So let's direct the energy, the merit we created here tonight to that goal. Happiness and ultimately the enlightenment of all living beings. Thank you very much for coming. I hope something you learned here tonight will be helpful for you.